If you're the kind of person who keeps asking why and hates being told what to do, then honestly I wouldn't recommend living in Japan. In a way, Japanese society works a lot like its football, full of excellent executors, but almost no room for the real rebels. These guys are troublemakers day to day, yet everyone pinks all their hopes on them when the clock's running out. I don't know whether you're like this kind of people, but if you never trusted authority, if you always hated blind obedience, Japan's probably gonna teach you a lesson. A lot of things seem unbelievable in Japan if you didn't grow up there. For example, if a student's hair is not naturally black or straight, some schools require paperwork to prove that it's real hair. Otherwise, they're expected to correct it before coming to school. And you probably heard Japanese trains are extremely quiet. No phone calls, no loud talking. What you probably haven't heard is if your train runs late to school or work, sorry the train was late doesn't cut it. You need an official stamp certificate by the railway company. Otherwise, being late is still a responsibility because that is a rule. And you know what gets me? Ask a Japanese person what they think about the rules like this. Most will tell you the rules are fine. Maybe the process could run smoother. That's it. It's almost like the first question is not should these rules even exist? It's how can we make these rules work better? Or now imagine someone who doesn't just follow orders but actually wants to know why. Drop them into a typical Japanese company. Here's what that goes. First week, a senior tells you put these files over there. You ask why? They answer because that's how we've always done it. You ask why always? Now the room feels different. Because you're not talking about where the files belong anymore. You're questioning whether the organization has the right to decide in the first place. Then week 2, you manage your pitches or plan. You spot the logic holes and take it apart right there in the meeting room. You think you're helping the team think clearly. Everyone else think you're just ruining the atmosphere. Week 3, the company plans a dinner after work. You say I'd rather go home to my wife and kids. You think that's just personal boundaries. Your co-workers think you don't want to be part of the group. Then week 4, people start keeping distance. Someone pulls you aside and says, you should try to stay inside with the group because that's what everyone else does. So you ask, what if everyone else is wrong? Am I supposed to be wrong too? You know logically you're right, but put that logic into Japanese society, it sounds like you're announcing the group's unwritten rules no longer apply to you. And that's the loop so many outsiders get stuck in. They complain they can never fit into Japanese society. Japanese people feel equally confused. They honestly don't know how to deal with someone who won't follow the group but only seems to care about themselves. So why few people ask whether these rules are fair or whether they should exist at all? The answer is actually pretty simple. Skip the culture talk, the geography, the weather. Here's what's actually going on. Any society with a large population and limited resources, its first priority is not freedom, it's preventing chaos. And different societies solve that problem in different ways. China built dense family and kinship networks, Singapore relies on strict law enforcement, and Japan solves it with an incredibly detailed system of social rules. For example, you know how the angle of a bow in Japan changes depending on who you are bowing to. Sounds insane, right? But the logic underneath it is not complicated. The more details you define behavior at every social level, the less uncertainty the whole system has to deal with, and the lower the cost of running society would be. Think about your experience of seeing a doctor in a hospital. Endless paperwork, tedious procedures as hell. No exceptions anywhere in the world. It's not there to make your life either. It's there to make the governance either. Think about what you're taught from childhood. Standing quiet in line, not interrupting, not being a burden to people around you. Most people call these good manners, and they are. But have you asked one more question? Why are they considered good? Who decided that? Who defines what counts as proper behavior? Take this gesture. In many countries it means good, okay? But in parts of Brazil, Turkey, Russia and some Middle East countries, the exact same gesture can be deeply offensive. So who is right? Most people answer that every culture has its own standards. A rebel asks something different. Why should I obey standards that someone else invented? There's an old English saying, a cat may look at a king, but the real rebel will say something different. A cat may look at a king, but a rebel looks at the rules that protect the king. Well, you know when you start staring at the system, things become uncomfortable. Let's pump the brakes for a second, because if you go this too far, most people stop agreeing with you. But here's a part you can't argue with. A surprising number of people at the very top of their fields have been always rebels. Take Richard Masinko, drink hard, swore constantly, ignore rules, argue with his superiors, spent his whole career being a walking headache for the Navy, and yeah, he founded Sim 6. He also created Red Cell. If you're interested in military history, go read about him. His story was unbelievable. And Steve Jobs is another obvious example. I won't even get into it. Most people already know his story better than I do. But here's the catch. Mainstream society really enjoys living with people like this. Japan's most famous modern rebel was probably Sakamoto Ryoma. The system said samurai shouldn't associate with commoners, so he did. The rules said he couldn't leave his domain, so he left. Tradition said a samurai should devote himself to the sword. He studied navigation instead. Whatever society told him not to do, that became exactly what he wanted to do. It's no exaggeration to say that Ryoma helped design Japan's path from the feudal country into a modern nation, and yet he was assassinated just at the age of 31. It took almost a century before it became one of Japan's most admired historical figures. Maybe the only place rebels get a real happy landing is in fiction, Monkey D. Luffy. But then again, maybe that's exactly why real rebels are rare, and when they do exist, they tend to end badly. So we go looking for that same phrase in somewhere safer to find it, in a story, on a screen. Here's the last thing worth saying. The West loves to talk about freedom, equality, breaking the rules. All men are created equal. All that. But the reality is Japanese students rarely challenge their teachers face to face. Neither do most Western students. Japanese employees don't talk back to their department head. Neither do most employees in the West. People love using Steve Jobs as proof that Western companies encourage open debate. What they usually forget is even his own employees were terrified of him. If you honestly believe every employee in some big American companies can speak freely to leaders, you probably get walked out by HR before lunch. So is Japan deliberately suppressing rebellious personalities? Not even close. The uncomfortable truth is that almost every society does. Look at what happened to many brilliant wartime generals. When the war is over, they became political problems. Put a rebel inside a Western corporation, their running probably wouldn't much better than it would be in Japan. Same unfair rules waiting for the average employees, same official politics, same people sucking up to the boss. None of that is optional. It's what keeps any large system from falling apart. Diego Maradona is the perfect example. As a footballer, he was a national hero, a man who could change the outcome of a match almost by himself. But when he became Argentina's head coach, the locker room turned it into a war of faction. The results were a disaster. Maybe that's the fate of every rebel. In a crisis, they are the only tool sharp enough to break the deadlock. In a stable system, they're just a bomb nobody's refused yet. And at the end of the day, I'm not telling you how valuable rebels can be, or how badly they fit into the real world. The most ironic stuff is if you've got the personality, but not the skill to back it up, people like me, for example, then honestly it doesn't matter where you live, life probably won't be easy. Alright, that's it for today. If you also like digging into the root, hit follow or dig it deeper next time.